Let's go now to Africa. Al-Qaeda militants have claimed responsibility for a shooting in the Ivory Coast, which has killed at least 16 people. The attackers targeted a beach resort in a World Heritage Area that's popular with Western tourists. It's raised fears about the spread of radical Islamism in Western Africa, as Anne Barker reports.
Witnesses say gunmen opened fire on a beach at the Grand Bassam resort east of the capital, Abidjan. It was truly terrifying, says this woman. It was truly terrorists because the people we were with told us that once these men began to speak in Arabic, at that moment they knew it was terrorists. We never thought this could happen here under these circumstances. The attackers targeted 3 hotels, sending tourists running in terror. One 5-year-old child was reportedly killed despite kneeling down and begging for his life. A woman was shot in the chest. Some people lay on the ground, but they started to spray bullets at them. Some tried to swim away. They started shooting at them, said another witness. Footage from the scene showed local officials treating the wounded. 16 people were killed, among them at least 2 European tourists. Ivory Coast's Interior Minister Hamed Bakayoko said 6 assailants were among the dead.
Les forces de défense et de sécurité ivoiriennes.
The defence and security forces intervened immediately and they neutralised these terrorists. He said, "We're combing the area and a detailed report will be released in the next few hours." Ivory Coast's President Alassane Ouattara visited the scene within hours of the attack. Bodies were still strewn around him on the beach and nearby roads. These cowardly terrorist attacks will not be tolerated in the Ivory Coast, and we've taken important measures. These attacks were brought under control in 3 or 4 hours thanks to our security and defence forces. The mass shooting raises new fears about the spread of radical Islam in West Africa. In January, dozens of people were killed in a similar attack on a hotel in neighbouring Burkina Faso, and Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility for an attack in Mali last November, which killed at least 20 people. One terrorism expert, Greg Barton from Deakin University, says all of the northern half of Africa is at risk of potential attack.
Look, I think it confirms, unfortunately, that Al-Qaeda-related groups, and this does all seem to be AQIM, Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, has enough force strength and enough capacity and enough ability to infiltrate, in this case, the length of Ivory Coast, presumably coming in from Mali, the north, going the whole length of the country to the Atlantic coast. And that means that the whole of West Africa now faces this threat. It's no longer something that's isolated to pockets of Mali, for example.
What exactly do they want, whether it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda? What are they hoping to achieve?
Well, in this case, it's simply about pushing their profile up. They're not making specific demands. They're not trying to change national governments. There's no particular policy that they're engaging with. They're simply trying to project their presence. In the longer run, of course, they've got a dream of having a large Al-Qaeda presence in West and North Africa and picking up youthful recruits on the basis of their rising brand. But I don't think there's any great sophisticated strategy here. It's just about boosting profile.
Is it the case then that Al-Qaeda simply feels threatened by ISIS's expansion?
Yeah, Al-Qaeda feels threatened. There's a rivalry there, and this is a product of that competition. But also, sadly and ironically, in the past, Al-Qaeda was more discerning about its attacks. It generally spent a long time planning, and it had some sort of end in mind. It didn't simply do whatever it could do, and it wasn't simply violence for violence sake. Now, unfortunately, the idea of suicide bombers going to a beach resort and opening fire, knowing that they'll lose their own lives in the process, and having no particular outcome in mind, that's the sort of stuff we associate with Islamic State or ISIS. And in a sense, their potency, their profile has forced the Al-Qaeda affiliates like AQIM to copy them and do the same thing. And so it's even more senseless violence.
That's terrorism analyst Greg Barton from Deakin University, ending that report from Anne